What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing the reading wrap-up, which is always such a fun one for the lovely month of July. If that sounds like something you would enjoy, definitely stick around for the video. It's reading time here at J-Bay's Corner. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, primarily on bookish related content. And if that sounds like something up your alley, you're definitely in the right place. For those of you that are new, if you do enjoy, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification to become a part of our bookish addicted family. For those of you that are returning, I cannot thank you enough. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, and I would not be able to do this without you guys. That being said, let's jump into the video. Now, I am going to try to keep this a little bit on the shorter side, so I'm not going to go into too much detail with any of these books. But the first one that I want to talk about is Atmosphere by Jenkins Reid. For anyone who's looking for a novel that's a love story, but also very much rooted in characters that have a lot of depth and intensity, Jenkins Reid is a great author to pick up. She has written some fantastic novels: Daisy Joan and the Six, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Carrie Soto is Back, Malibu Rising. There's just so many novels that she's written that are absolutely wonderful, and the character depth is really, really interesting. There's also another book called After I Do, which was really interesting, about a married couple and what happens after the marriage, which was really interesting. Atmosphere did not fail in any regards compared to her other books that she's written. In this novel, we are basically following a bunch of main female lead characters who are absolutely brilliant, living in the time of the space race, who are waiting for their chance to become astronauts and part of the NASA crew. Now, in this book, we are primarily following Joan, who is not only a phenomenal physicist and mathematician who is waiting to get into the NASA airspace and be considered equal to the men that are in that department as well, but she also happens to be an amazing amazing aunt to her niece, who is unfortunately in the care of what I could only call a troubled mother. And we also learn more about her journey as a woman and her romance and her life. This book, I think, is very emotionally endearing. It's very powerful. It's very beautifully written, and it's definitely the right pace in terms of the writing. Overall, I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The next book that I ended up reading, which I was actually anticipating to hate but loved, was Camera Shy by Kay Cove. Now, in this book, we are following a young woman who is absolutely brilliant at her job. She started a company with her ex-boyfriend, who she thought was going to propose to her and they were going to live a happily ever after, only to find out that he was going to dump her at the last minute because he felt their sex life was not satisfying enough. She is falling apart, crumbling, and she decides she has to get out of the home that they share together. So along with her female best friend, who is a questionable character herself, they run to Vegas, where she ends up babysitting a house for a old client who has a bunch of fish, and he has a surf shop. And when she's there, she also happens to meet the boudoir photographer, Finn, next door, and the two of them end up hitting it off. She slowly realizes that there's more to relationships and love than just physique and appearance, and he basically learns that there's more to women than just shallowness and craziness. While this book is extremely predictable, it is, I think, beautifully written, and while it is very high in spice, I would say honestly like probably 4 out of 5 chilies, because every 4 chapters there's something in that regard that's happening. It is a very emotionally poignant book, which I thought was really interesting. I also would say that you don't have to read all of the spice. I actually ended up skipping quite a bit when it became overwhelming for me, but I still thoroughly enjoyed the storyline. In fact, to the point where I ended up reading this book in 2 days because I just thought it was such a phenomenal story and the characters were so well developed. So while it is extremely predictable and it does have quite a bit of spice, I would still say that this book ended up rating a solid 4 stars for me, only because the female character was very endearing and easy to read, and the main male character was also someone that I could root for. And it's really rare that I feel like both characters in a romance are fleshed out and have depth and have interesting appeal to each one of them with demons that they're trying to sort through on their own. But the communication in this is phenomenal. The way that the characters open up is amazing, and overall just a very sweet read. Next up, I ended up reading the third book in the B.K. Borison Lovelight Farms series. This is the one that is written for summer, and we're following Layla, who happens to be a baker, and her love interest as well, whose name I'm blanking on, Caleb, who is basically one of the sweetest men in town. But Layla does not believe in dating people from town, and she also feels like all she does is pick a slew of terrible men who treat her terribly. Caleb has been crushed with Layla since the day he met her, and they finally bump into each other out of town, and they start contemplating the idea of what it would be like to fake date so that she could figure out what he does wrong on dates, and he can also help her realize what a good dating experience should look like. Naturally, the two of them do fall in love throughout the course of this novel. It's very sweet. It's very cute. B.K. Borison has a way with words and metaphors and similes that really make you feel like you're within the book. I will say the miscommunication trope in this book really, really angered me in certain parts of the book, but I think overall it was very sweet. It was also really nice to see Layla stand up for herself and her bakery and really see the town rally around her. I love a good small town storyline, so if you like Heart of Dixie or you like Gilmore Girls, this definitely has that vibe to it. Overall, a very sweet book, very, very predictable, solid 3-star read for me. I also read a book by Lynn Painter. She happens to be one of my all-time favorite authors. I tend to primarily enjoy her young adult fiction, actually, more so than her adult fiction. But First and Forever was still super cute. In this book, we are following the story of a young woman who she's a young woman who is a huge fan of the Minneapolis Coyote football team that she's absolutely obsessed with. She happens to go to a game with her dad and accidentally gets into a sparring match with the mascot and ends up on a TV show where she meets the MVP Connor Cunningham, and they end up having chemistry on the show. So Connor is then addressed by his PR team and requested to go out with Duffy so that they can get the team some respect again. In the process, the two characters do end up falling in love. Now, in this book, miscommunication trope is a huge part of this, but I was able to handle this one a little bit better because it's very, very apparent from the beginning of the book that both characters are very closed off and their family dynamics are a little bit different. It's also apparent that Connor wants to tell Duffy but doesn't know how because he's in the process of dating and falling for her while simultaneously dealing with his PR nightmare and mess. And the miscommunication that does end up happening is because of a phone call that comes in, not necessarily because he himself is miscommunicating. So I did appreciate that fact. I also really enjoyed seeing Connor stand up for Duffy, especially with her brothers and her father. Her mother unfortunately has passed away. Her father is dealing with a lot of health issues, so Duffy is kind of moved in with her dad and is doing everything she can to make sure he's okay and healthy while simultaneously taking on the role of the young daughter that is a little bit insane. So I think it was really cute seeing that balance of her being a woman of her own while simultaneously being treated like she was 15 by her older brothers and her dad. It was a very cute family dynamic to read for sure. And I think Connor's story is also really sweet in the way that he is with his grandpa and his family and how he interacts with Duffy's family. And it was really sweet to see that he was such a down-to-earth, kind human, especially given the level of fame that he has accumulated with his MVP status. Overall, it's exactly what you would expect from a Lynn Painter. It's a great summer read. It's very predictable. It's definitely a classic romance, but it is one that strikes your heart. So I would say this was a solid 3-star for me. Now, the next 3 books are actually a trilogy relating to a world where monsters and humans are both alive. However, the monsters basically have the ability to time travel, and they're only able to do so by stealing human life. In the course of the book, we see multiple timelines that occur. We see crazy changes that occur through these timelines being affected. And we also see the story of a love triangle between our main female character and the 2 male characters that play a role in this book. I have done a full and thorough series review on these books that I will attach at the end of this video in case you guys are interested. I didn't want to spend too much time on the Vanessa Lynn series, but I will say overall the series was a 3.5, 4-star read for me. The first book is absolutely adorable. It kind of sets the scene. You get to know all the different characters in the book and you get to understand why they are the way they are. And we find out that the timeline that the main characters are living in is actually an alternate timeline from reality. This book, I think, was the most interesting one for me. It ended up being a solid 4-star. And then we have I think that's the correct order. So Never a Hero is the second book, I want to say, in the series. This one is very fascinating because the timeline has changed. Characters have been rewritten in a sense, but they still all exist, and only our main character remembers the changes in the timeline. She now has the entire monster court after her to basically get rid of her, and also, to see if the Monster King can restore the original timeline and also bring to heal her effects on the timeline as well. We also see some changes and repercussions based on the decisions that our main character made. It's fascinating to see the different timeline, the different worlds, how the characters were affected, how their interactions have changed. So I do think that was really fascinating to read. This one, again, was very interesting, very fast-paced, and I really love how all the characters come together for the storyline to progress. So this one I did end up giving a solid 4 stars as well. However, the final book, Once a Villain, puts us in a world that's very dark and dingy, and it's also the book where we really get to see the most teenage angst and brooding. We see the characters come to head in terms of their relationships, and we also see just a lot of stagnant, dark imagery in this book. And I felt like a lot of the events that take place leading to the final events and the end of the book felt very repetitive from the first and second book. So unfortunately, I did not enjoy this book as much. I will say that the end of the book was really interesting, but I still ended up giving this book a 2 stars. If you want even further detail on the storyline as well as the series, definitely check out the video attached at the end. Next up, I ended up reading Sarah Penner's The Amalfi Curse. This book is by the same author who wrote The Lost Apothecary. It is often focused on 2 different storylines, one in the present, one in the past, and we're basically following 2 strong female characters. It is rooted in a little bit of magic and a little bit of mystical realism. In this book, there is a group of women who lived in the 1980s, I want to say, who essentially were striga, or witches, in the town of what is it called? Positano in Italy, right off the Amalfi Coast, and they have the ability to control waters. Now, during the time of their existence, there were 2 particularly powerful brothers who were known for kidnapping and looting and murder and all such things. And in the course of the story, the women unfortunately get caught up with them, and so then they're forced to take measures that essentially lead to them overcoming these 2 men, retrieving kidnapped women, and also trying to flee and protect themselves from the eyes of the public. There's betrayal, there's heartbreak, there's romance, all kinds of things that we discover in this history. And then in today's time, we have a young woman who happens to be a diver who is sent to the Amalfi Coast in order to help with shipwreck findings and to learn more about the area and the mystical history associated with it. However, she also has a side gig in mind. Her father also used to be a diver, and he happened to find riches and treasure in the water that he never had a chance to actually fully discover and catalog and report to the historical foundations in the Amalfi area, because unfortunately he suffers a stroke. So she decides she's going to come and try to find the gems. Meanwhile, her dad's old friend / corrupt business partner also shows up trying to steal these jewels and this history for himself, as he's heard of the discoveries that her father has made. And so it kind of becomes a race against time. And she also starts to discover more and more in terms of the history of these striga women and what happened in the 1980s based on a journal that her father found cataloging the events that took place during this time. Overall, very fascinating novel. The love stories in this are so sweet. The women are such powerful characters, and it was definitely a very gripping tale. I am so glad I finally got to this one and I read it. It ended up being a solid 4-star read for me. Total Dreamboat is the last physical book that I ended up reading. This one is a classic, typical romance that you see on a cruise ship. We have a young woman who is coming off of a terrible breakup and has a horrible job that she absolutely despises, and she's just trying to get her feet underneath her. She really regrets the fact that her life has not been going according to plan. Please excuse me, I'm just going to take a little bit of water here. And she ends up going on this cruise with her influencer friend, whose whole shtick is to basically do silly recommendations for finding a billionaire as a catch. So she's basically playing the role of a, what's it called? A bunny. And everyone knows it's a ruse, but her love interest does not. Meanwhile, we have Felix, who is a recovering alcoholic, has some businesses behind him, and comes from a family of wealth. He ends up on this cruise, and he and Hope end up hitting it off throughout the course of the beginning of the book until a huge miscommunication happens and the two of them are no longer speaking. They then find themselves stranded in a random spot that the ship had originally docked at, and they now have to figure out a way in order to get back to their families without passports, credit cards, etc. Very interestingly enough, they do end up reconciling throughout the course of that book, and they deal with through the course of the book and through their isolation, and then eventually they part on positive terms. We do see at the end of the book both of them kind of dealing with the demons that they have to face, and then finally reconciling at the end of the book. So a very traditional trajectory of a romance book. Set in a cruise setting. I would say that this book felt a little too formulaic for me, and I will say the writing style is not 100% for me. It did feel like some of the characters were a little immature, and it did feel like the romance happened a little too quickly, which tends to bother me. But I do think that I also felt like the way that the romance ended and the way the book cultivates at the end just felt a little too on the nose and unrealistic for me. So unfortunately, this book for me was a 2-star read. But again, that's 100% my opinion based on how I felt in terms of this writing. It's not in any way, shape, or form to say that the author herself is a bad author or the book itself is bad. I just think based on the formulaic nature of the book and the two-dimensional nature of the characters, it just made it really difficult for me to plug into the book. It also felt like the main female lead character was a little bit more whiny than anything else. She didn't really take any initiative to create change in her life until the very end of the book, which was really frustrating to see. Very victim mentality philosophy, and that I really struggle with. So it wasn't the right fit for me. However, I would not say the book is bad by any means, and I do think if you want a fun, fast-paced summer read, this is still a great book. Just unfortunately not quite my cup of tea. The final book that I ended up reading this month was The Virgin Suicides by Jeffrey Eugenides. I don't know how to actually pronounce his name. This is a very famous novel. It is studied in schools. It was turned into a film adaptation. It is considered a classic by many. I will be the first one to say that this book irritated me so much. It almost became a DNF, but it was not, because it was the book that was selected for the book club this month. So I had to finish it. But I do think the frustration with this book is that you get the entire story from the perspective of teenage boys. You don't actually fully understand what any of the women go through. You don't get a full understanding of the kind of abuse that they might be facing within their home. And we don't ever get full clarity on why the women commit the suicides in the way that they do. It is a very dark book. I also feel like it really highlights teenage boy behavior, that it's very inappropriate, very much like, oh my God, that is exactly what I want, and that is the girl I need, until they get what they want from them and they can dump them whenever they feel like it. Also, it really highlights male characters in their teenage years in the worst possible way. The cool characters are the ones who are potheads and alcoholics, and it promotes the idea of the little boys lying and being peeping Joes and things like that, which it did not sit well with me. This novel, I can see where people would say maybe it has some depth, and I can see where people would say it's a coming of age story, and I can see where they might say, hey, the boys learned their lessons and they learned from this. But it was just one of those books that felt very incomplete and frustrating to me. And I can't say there was a single redeemable character in the entirety of the series. So I think because of that reason, I just really struggled with that book. That being said, it was a 1-star read for me, only because of the fact that I felt like there was no real storyline. I just felt like it was young boys being boys and trying to basically make it seem like their behavior was okay. I can see also why this book might be one that is studied, especially by adolescents in high school or college, because it is, I guess, relevant to a certain extent of what people go through in high school and college, sure. But I definitely don't think the storyline translates to today in 2026 with how far we've come in terms of appreciation of genders and women and men's roles and equality and respect towards one another. I think in those ways it doesn't really translate. And as far as the mystery and the thriller aspect of the book, it really leaves the reader wanting, because you don't actually learn anything about what the girls have gone through within their own home. And so that mystery component of why did they do what they did and why did they commit suicides in the way that they do is not really explored or explained, which I think was extremely frustrating. So unfortunately, that was a 1-star read for me. And that does bring me to the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I hope it was fun to see what I read this month. Definitely leave me a comment below of all the books that you guys have read. I would love to know your thoughts. If you have read any of these books and you have different feelings or thoughts on them, or you have different ratings, please also leave me comments about that. I think the beauty of books is different people take different things away from each of the different books. And so I would love to know other people's thoughts and philosophies on it as well. And I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your busy days to watch this video with me. For those of you that are new, if you did enjoy the content, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so you can be part of our bookish community. For those of you that are returning, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for taking the time. Life is busy, and I appreciate that. I truly appreciate each and every one of you and your love and your support. And I will leave everybody with this. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're getting plenty of time to rest, relax, and read, and much, much needed self-care time. I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye.